This is the Weigh In Podcast by Ben Chestnut and the occasional pop in Sebastian Romero. On this week's Weigh In, we talked to you about the huge news that came out. Tank Davis versus Jake Paul is now canceled. Interesting. And whatever else comes up in the time of recording. So, with that being said, that is this week's Weigh In. So if we jump right into this one, I think it's more of an interesting topic. It was not the original topic for this week's episode, but the question here we say to ourselves is, the question you say to ourselves is, was it a Tank Davis running moment? No, it was not. This is one of my times where I don't kind of air out everything. I say, Google it, go ahead and Google it, what happened, but there's some legal going on with Tank Davis, which they've allowed him to, I would say they've allowed him to back out of the fight to be able to handle his business, and it just kind of comes at a challenging time. And right now, we have no way of knowing if Jake Paul is going to find another opponent. But really, I don't think they are. I think it's off and totally, and I think Jake Paul is going to get a new date. Now, the question here is, can we get Canelo? So Canelo, Jake Paul. We got to figure out what's next for Jake Paul, because we were really looking forward to this fight, and to hear that now it is called off entirely means that we're not going to see no more Jake versus Tank Davis, because Tank's got to handle the business. What it happens. It is what it is, But it's like we said, I guess this is what this episode is going to turn into. Outside of your sport, you got to conduct yourself in the best way possible. So one of the first things we talk about is we said being one's best self, but you can't get yourself in any type of gray area or any troubles outside of what you got to do. This was, I understand people say it's not a huge fight, but it was a huge fight for Jake Paul to get in a ring with a guy like Gervonta Tank Davis. And it was a huge fight for Gervonta to come out and, avenge the Mike Tyson. Go ahead and beat him for Mikey. And I think that was going to be a very well moment. That was, that's how I kind of saw it as framed, is that, he's getting the revenge for Mike Tyson here. And I thought that was a great thing. And I think in terms of a lot of that is that we have to say to ourselves here, why, in most cases, we have to say to ourselves here, why do you get yourself in all this trouble right up to the fight? Like, come on, man. And, I think in terms of it, they're just trying to do the right thing for Tank here and giving him the time to say, you're not going to be focused if you gotta handle this and that. And I think it's an interesting situation that has definitely come drawing out for Tank. That it is it is a very good, interesting situation for Tank. So it's kind of going to get real interesting because to see where this goes. But for Jake, it's going to be interesting for Jake because we want to see who's the next opponent here. What's the next fight? They were all set up for Miami. And, I just knew this was going to fall through because, remember, it was supposed to be in Georgia. They was going to have it in Georgia. Then all of a sudden, they changed venues. And I know that might not have nothing to do with one another, but venue changes. And and as soon as they changed the venue, I started to think, is this really going to happen? I know it was supposed to happen, but I'm like, I had doubts on this fight happening. And with this coming out, I was like, wow, that little gut feeling was right. That, this is now canceled, and at first I didn't think the report was real, but you know how I do it here on the way. And ESPN broke the report as well. So that was something that as soon as ESPN broke the report, I said, okay, it's legit. We don't normally break things this early when they come out. We kind of let the developments come out, but not this time because they say MVP also posted Monday night too. So it kind of had a lot of posting, and we take ESPN and MVP posting, most valuable promotions, and now we got that Jake Paul Tank Davis is canceled for November 14th, which is it's just upsetting to hear that the fight is canceled. That's just unbelievable. But I think in terms of it, there's some good fights Paul can get. Possibly if we could see him up against Anthony Joshua, that would be nice. But there's some fights. Canelo would be nice for Jake Paul. I know a lot of people were coming in saying they want to see him with Terrence Crawford, but let's be honest. Let's be honest. Canelo didn't beat Terrence Crawford, so what makes us think Jake Paul can do it? I'm just saying, what makes us think Jake Paul can? I'm not saying he can or can't. I'm just saying, what makes us think? If we say Canelo, great boxer, great legacy, has done so many great things, couldn't beat Terrence Crawford, why do we think Jake can do it? I don't know. Our testament here is that we were going to look at Jake Paul Tank Davis, and then judge whether he's ready for Crawford. But we don't have that Tank Davis no more. So I think what's next for Paul? I think maybe we can get some Anthony Joshua. Maybe we can get some Canelo. Maybe we can get you on a belt. Let's get a belt in Jake's. All the champions when he was ranked that was running. Let's get Jake a belt, even if it's the WBA, WBO. Let's get him a belt. Let's get Jake a belt. Let's get Jake a belt now. Take a belt fight. You wanted to take an exhibition against Davis. No more exhibition, man. Let's get you a belt now. Let's get a champion and let you fight for a belt. Let's get you up that ranking so you can fight for a belt. Because they ain't gonna be Jake. They ain't gonna be Jake. They ain't gonna be Jake. We gotta. I know it was rumored he wanted that WBC and it just wasn't happening. But hey, let's get Jake a belt at this point. He's lining up the fights. Like a Tank Davis, that was a good fight, That was gonna be a good fight. It was gonna be a good fight, but we hope all things well with Tank. He can get his stuff done and get his stuff done, and they can revisit this at a later date. Obviously at a later date but I don't think we're gonna see Tank Davis for a little while, given everything that is going on. And with that being said, if you kind of lost at this point, that means you ain't Google it. Go ahead and Google it, because we're not really gonna break the. We don't really do that. We kind of try to keep this as friendly as possible and as family friendly as possible. Although some episodes are not. We try to, and that's kind of why we say Google some stuff, because you never know what's right or wrong on the internet nowadays. So you kind of gotta, with all this AI out there, you gotta kind of say, hey, we can break the general report that it's off, and stuff like that, but we don't kind of get into all the nitty details. We say Google it and make your own opinions on that. And that's just simply because everybody drafts their own opinions. I don't want to sway nobody one way or another. And this definitely is not one of those times we say, Tank Davis was running from this fight. He wasn't running. It just a bad timing with something coming up, and it just you can't put on a fight with what's going on with Davis. You can, but you don't wanna. You don't want to put a fight on, and you gotta. It's just when you're fighting Jake Paul, you want to be ready for that. You don't want to be distracted, because that's kind of how. He wasn't distracted. He was late. I say lazy during Lamont Roach. He didn't take it serious, but that's how he almost got beat. And Tank undefeated. It's not a perfect record because he got that draw, but he undefeated. We could say that Tank undefeated. Tank don't need to end up catching a law. Although it was an exhibition, it don't matter. You know what I mean? Like, even if your record's not affected, it's still kind of the video's still there. It's kind of like that Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney. The video is still there if you getting knocked down a couple times, regardless of whatever happened there. Video's still there. So I think them calling off the fight was the right thing to get Tank. Was the right thing to say, hey, we get something's going on huge like that. We're not gonna put this on no more. We're not gonna make you have to fight on the 14th and still have to be, doing what's gotta be taken down. So I think they did the right thing for Tank. I think they really did the right thing for Tank, and I think that's a good thing, to that they allowed him. I mean, I would say allowed, because very well they could have said, no, we still got to put this fight on. They could have rejected it to want to cancel it. But, to be understanding, it was a good thing, a very good thing. So I think they did. I think they did a good thing, and a lot of what's going on, I think, was great. And that's And that's the good thing, that they called the fight off, but that gives Jake an opportunity to, fight somebody at his weight and, have a record count. No exhibition, Jake. No exhibition. You get an exhibition, we expect it to be against Mayweather. That's what we expect. I mean, that's another one. It would be nice to get Jake Paul Mayweather. That's another one. It'd be real nice to get it. That's another good one. A real good one. And that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how that draw out, because there's quite a few opponents I would like to see for Jake. If we could land Mayweather, that'd be nice. If we could get Anthony Joshua, that would be nice. If we could get Carnelo, that would be nice. If we could get Jake Paul, Benavidez, I'd like that too. Benavidez, Jake Paul, because they do these. You would have never thought Tank Davis, Jake Paul would happen, and then they make him wait, others wait. So I mean, we'd like to see him with Crawford, but I I don't know if Jake's ready for all that. And I'm not saying that Jake can't be. I'm just saying that we saw Terrence Crawford beat Canelo, so we wonder if Jake should even get there yet. Take go through some more levels before going there. Let's get you a belt. Let's get you some belts first before going up against Crawford. Let's get you something to walk out with. Everybody can hold it up. Some belts for Jake. And I think that there's some good looking opponents here. And I'm gonna say this again. They better be a boxer. I don't want some TikToker, some YouTuber. No, we done with that, Jake. We need to make sure they're a boxer. We need to make sure they're a boxer. No UFC guy, no bare knuckle guy, boxer. A boxing guy. So that's going to be real interesting to see if Jake could get a boxing guy going. Get a boxing guy going. That's going to be real interesting. I think. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. So we gonna figure it out though. We gonna find out whether it's a boxer, whether it's going to be anything like that. So that's an interesting situation to who's going to be this next opponent for Jake Paul. Um, you know, that's going to be interesting. Who comes next for our boy Jake. You know, that's going to be real good. What's next for Jake? Okay, so the next thing we could worry about, because we got no Jake Paul, Tank Davis. So let's take our attention to November 22nd. Brian Norman Jr. versus Devin Haney. That's what we could take our attention to now, because we got no more Jake. We got no more Jake Gervonta. That I think was the biggest fight in November, and now it's canceled. So we're on to Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. So let's see. What do we think here? The odds as of right now are, I believe, is showing me an even 125. All right, it says ESPN.com, Brian Norman Jr., 125 versus Devin Haney even. So that's going to be good on Days and Pay-Per-View, November 22nd. So that's looking good. We got some Devin Haney we could be more focused on as we await the next Jake Paul opponent, because this is going to be really good. You know, this is going to be real good, to see what's going on. You know, to see what's going to happen here, where we're going to end up with this for the next Jake Paul point. But we're going to be seeing what kind of Devin Haney we're going to get on November 22nd. Because are we going to get a good Devin Haney? We're going to get a good Devin Haney. Hey, this going to look good. But we got to get a good Devin Haney. We want to see Devin Haney get back to what he's able to do. Devin Haney, we gotta be worried about Devin Haney now because we got no Jake Paul no more. You know, we got no Jake Paul. We got no Jake Paul. So that's gonna be the best thing. And that is something that is something good. Man, let's talk about this, man. This something I want to see. Anybody want to see Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson fight? I want to see that. Man, I'm thinking about that right now. Devin Haney versus Shakur Stevenson. That's an interesting one. Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson. I think that'd be a good fight. Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson. Who y'all got now? I'm gonna be honest. If Devin Haney fights Shakur Stevenson, I got Shakur Stevenson. I don't think Devin Haney will win that fight. You know, I think that I got Shakur Stevenson. No, I don't think I got Shakur Stevenson. I don't think Devin Haney can win that fight. Man, Devin, I don't care what most will say about what happened during that Ryan Garcia fight, but King Rai beat Devin Haney. I don't care what people say at the end of the day. King Rai beat Devin Haney. He embarrassed him out there. And now you think he could beat Shakur? No, I don't think so. That's why I think I'm going Shakur in a Devin Haney Shakur fight. That's something we'd like to see. But we got Devin Haney fighting on the 22nd. So hopefully next year we can get lucky and see that. That'd be nice. That'd be real nice. See Devin Haney Shakur. That'd be a good fight though. That'd be a real good fight though. That'd be a really good fight. That'd be like word up. That's the best way we could get a fight. That's a good like when you sit there thinking about it. That's a good Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson will be a nice fight. And that's good. That's gonna be good. You think the way they match up, I got Shakur Stevenson in that. I think that's a good. You know, I think that's a good fight to go. But I think that'll be real good to see something like that. But either way, we want to see we want to see a good fight with this Miss Jake Paul, Gervonta Davis. So it's gonna be interesting. You know, it's gonna be interesting. It's real interesting in terms of what's gonna happen, where it's gonna go, and how it's gonna sit there and come up in the way it can. It's gonna get real interesting in terms of all of that. What opponent can we see next for Jake? And I think I took some of the guys I named already. I want to see Anthony Joshua. I want to see a potential Canelo. If you really think you're all that, if you really are the guy and you don't run from nothing, let's see if we could get David Benavidez, Jake Paul, or let's get Jacob out. Let's get something going here for Jake. This November 14th is a huge. it's not a letdown because it's an understanding that things happen, and for Tank, and I'm glad it's not an injury for Tank because that would be horrible to hear an injury, but that you got something going on and you can't really put on the fight no more. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. It's a tough one. You know, I just sit here thinking like, man, that was gonna be a good fight. It just like that was a crushing blow to hear that one. Real crushing blow to hear that one come across. Just real crushing to hear that one come across. You don't expect something like that to happen, and it does. Like it's just a real tough situation. Real tough for Jake, for Paul Davis, man. And it's so close to date. Jake's not gonna find another opponent. They're gonna totally get a whole new. It's just real tough to see that happen. The fight get canceled. Real tough to see stuff like that get going and stuff like that happen when it was gonna be a good fight. It was gonna, man. They stacked up to want to be a good fight. It was gonna stack up to be really good. You know, I I just can't believe that. Man, I can't believe that. I just can't believe that. You know, it's tough. I I don't know. Part of me can't even fathom that they canceled the fight. You know that just got canceled. Like it was gonna be a good fight. It was gonna be so good. It was gonna be an amazing fight, and it was gonna be a great fight for Jake Paul. A real testament for Jake Paul. You know, real testament for Jake Paul to get in there against a guy like Tank Davis. It was just gonna be like it wasn't gonna be no more better than that. I can't. I can't. That was gonna be so good. That fight was gonna be good. Yo, that was gonna be a good fight. It was gonna be good, man, y'all. It was gonna be good. It was gonna be good. But now we're not gonna get that. So, I mean, we're gonna look forward to this Devin Haney, but I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not as exciting. Not as exciting as Jake Paul Tank Davis was, man. That Jake Paul Tank Davis, man, that was everything somebody could ask for. That was what we like to call the Christmas dream. We got Jake Paul Tank Davis, that Christmas dream to get Jake Paul Tank Davis. A Jake Paul Tank Davis fight. We got Jake Paul Tank Davis. We got a Jake Paul Tank. Like, man, I was excited for that. We was breaking that down. We said, oh, Gervonta got to take this serious. He can't have it like he can't we can't have it like the Lamont Roach. Take it serious. Get the get the get it done. Get it done. Get the revenge for Mike Tyson. You know, It's just you can't fathom. Jake Paul Tank Davis done. Wow. So I mean, I think the closest fight we're gonna be close to for Jake will be Anthony Joshua. I think that's gonna end up happening. I think we're gonna get an Anthony Joshua out of Jake. I really do. I really do. I think we're gonna get Anthony Joshua. I think we're gonna get a good thing. I think I just think, man, the way this came about, we was gonna have Jake Paul Tank this. Now we don't have Jake Paul Tank. That's a huge crushing blow. Huge crushing blow. And that's just crushing blow, man. Nobody ever expects that to happen. You can't, man. I wanted that Jake Paul Tank Davis. Man, man. I say this with great respect, man. I wanted that Jake Paul Tank Davis. Man. Man, y'all, this was a little quick epi. I say quick. I mean, it's gonna be normal lane, but I say quick because it's not our normal planned out elaborate topic we normally have on the way in, because normally we have an elaborate topic, we have all the extensive background, but this just only dropped yesterday. Like, this only dropped yesterday. Like, I'm gonna get you straight. Like, I had a whole video recorded yesterday. Like, I recorded yesterday, and this dropped last night, and I was like, I gotta do a brand new vid. I gotta break this because this is unbelievable. So, with that being said, this is an epi of the weigh-in. This is the weigh-in by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional pop in Sebastian Romero. And we continue in the street. Now that we in November, we 1 month away from meeting a goal of recording a video every day. I mean, recording a video every week, twice a week. That's crazy. Would have never thought the weigh-in would have got there. It's a true testament to say when you line your goals, views, and values up right, you can accomplish what you need to do, and we're accomplishing that. I think it's the first year that our number of guests were down, but we're gonna get it back up next year. We're working on that. We were essentially working on that all year, trying to get it never could line up right, but we did have some good couple guests for you, but we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep getting better. You know, for all the people that watch us, we get your messages. We're gonna be answering the messages. Thursday's gonna be a good one. We got, man, the messages we get from you guys, the fans, like this week. I think we got about the sweetest message, and it was like, "Oh, can't wait for your next vid, bro." I, I, the the kid or the guy was like, I sit down with my girlfriend and we watch it at dinner time all the time. We watch you guys, and you guys do great stuff, extensive breakdown, and wrestling is here at this point. And our first Takedown Thursdays in wrestling season is not even about college wrestling, which is crazy. It's about the Bassett situation. Everybody wants me to weigh in, so we've done extensive background on the NCAA rules. We've got, we got a lot of stuff. We won't be naming all our sources for all the stuff because there was a lot of text back and forth between some of the contacts we know in college wrestling, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. I'll break it down Thursday, but that's going to be a good breakdown for the weigh-in because I'm going to break that down Thursday, the full thing. So, but that being said, that's another epi. Uh, as always, that's it for this one. Weighing out. The weigh-in